Mr. Chair, just before I go into the motion, I would like to just comment on something that the Minister Alex Atwood said earlier on, and it was about the DUP's position on the welfare cuts. And I would ask conference at some time today, they can just roll back about 4 years and ask themselves how many jobs Peter Robinson had before he was kicked out of East Belfast, and also to remember many pensions that he actually received from those jobs. So it's a bit ironic that he should now be leading a party which is trying to introduce welfare cuts, when he himself, when he retires, and hopefully that'll be sooner rather than later, that he'll be all right with a number of pensions that he'll be getting, including the state one. Can I also say, Mr. Chair, that I'm a bit the confidence is what went in relation to this motion, because I know that, and you will probably know, the example that I'm going to use about gerrymandering will be the proposed Lisburn and Castlereagh Council. And unfortunately, when myself and Councillor Convery have met socially from time to time, and I've mentioned Lisburn City Council, he doesn't refer to it as Lisburn City Council, he refers to it as Lisburn Parish Council. So, as you can understand, I might get heckled from the right as, when I do begin to introduce the example of Lisburn City Council into the motion. For those who don't know it, Lisburn City Council will be merging with that other bastion of unionist democracy, and my other colleague, Councillor Hamby, is in the room. So if anybody wants to dispute what I'm going to say, I'm sure Councillor Hamby will be able to provide you with the evidence. Because the proposal for 11 councils is to merge Castlereagh and Lisburn. Now, to give you a bit of history about Lisburn City Council, it took 27 years for the first non-unionist to be elected to the position of mayor. That was the late Peter O'Hagan. And Peter O'Hagan was a member of the council for nearly 24 years before he was given that position. So that's how unionists in Lisburn City Council valued the nationalist community within Lisburn City Council, that it took them 27 years to get to the position where a nationalist could become the first citizen of the city. And I think, as Councillor Hamby will support me, there has never been a nationalist mayor of Castlereagh. There's been a deputy mayor, but there has never been a mayor. The nationalist community in Castlereagh have never been represented, but yet on the proposal for 11 councils, on the proposal that the DUP and Sinn Féin have put together, that's the two councils that they want to put together. So I ask you, conference, what are the chances of another non-unionist getting any sort of responsibility, and in particular an SDLP council? Because it's my calculation that there will be perhaps as few as 4 councillors, non-unionist councillors elected to the new council, and it'll be 10% out of the 40 that will represent the new council. And there could be 2 elected, one coming from the area of Castlereagh and one coming from the new Lisburn Council. So again, that'll give an indication of how things will be borne out under the 11 council model. Now, as we know, Sinn Féin have their eye on ourselves as far as the 11 council model is. But they know the reasons why they want to keep an eye on the SDLP as far as electoral politics and the seats that we hope and will take in the elections in 2014. But they do not know why the DUP are happy with the 11 model. And it is because they have plans to take as many councils as they have, be able to pull into line the Ulster unions, and maybe on occasion even the Alliance Party. And what they intend to do is to turn as many of these 11 councils into little Ulsters, where they will draw down the powers. And let's not forget, conference, there will be new powers given to the councils, and what they intend on doing is to run the 11, and they will run the 11 the way it suits the DUP, not the way it suits the ratepayers, and not the way it suits the electorate. in the council areas. Now, I've sent a message up, and I'm not actually sure about the answer that I got, but I suggested, and I asked the question from the Minister, is it possible for one ratepayer perhaps to go to court and challenge the 11 model? Because it's very clear that Sinn Féin and the DUP hope to divide this up between themselves, and I hope that perhaps some citizen who believes in equality and the value of their vote, along with other votes, will do the same thing and perhaps think about challenging the decision that's been taken by the big two in the executive. Thanks very much.
Okay, Brenda Stevenson, please. Second. If anyone would like to speak, if they put the slip of paper up here so that I know that they want to speak, otherwise I can't second guess it. Okay, thank you.
Chair, thank you. Conference, I'm happy to second this motion brought forward by the SDLP Association of Councillors. In our view, in the North West, the Derry-Strabane area, the 11 model contributes to sectarian division by implementing a green and orange divide. There's a weakening of identities in the smaller counties where people won't be able to see themselves in this larger model. It has an adverse impact on deprivation by merging Derry and Strabane and giving us a poverty super council. And I will be asking Martina Anderson, is that standing up for the North West? Is that contributing to the impact on child poverty in the North West? No, I don't think so. In Derry lately, Jared Liver brought a notice of motion to our council asking them to stand up and have a standalone council for Derry so that we could stand and protect the citizens and the ratepayers of our council area. Both Sinn Féin and the DUP voted against it. The 11 council model does not offer anything for the SDLP, and we will continue to oppose it. Thank you.
And there's no one else who's indicated to speak on this motion. Michael Carr, can I please reiterate, I can't keep asking from the floor. If people want to speak, send a slip of paper up here and we will call for you. Okay? Okay, Michael?
Okay, sorry, Chair. The reason I hadn't got it in was I didn't intend to speak and have nothing prepared. But I would like to stand to support the motion. We too, in the southeast of the province, if you like, the new amalgamated councils, Newry and Down District Council, have our problems with this. In particular, it wasn't so much a political argument that we have, but a boundaries argument, where one of the key aspects of the Boundary Commissioner's task was to make sure that there was proper rural and urban split. And it hasn't happened certainly in the Warrenpoint area. And it was just when Brian mentioned that he hoped some citizen would come along and possibly take a challenge to this, I can tell you that that is happening in our jurisdiction. It's over a rural-urban split as opposed to a political argument, but it's a very, very strong case. We've made representation to Alex.
£8 million from the people of Fermanagh to the people of Armagh to fund Armagh services. This, in a sense, or in essence, is taking from the poor to give to the rich. So we are calling on the Minister to ensure that Armagh pays its own debts and that the people of Fermanagh are treated fairly and with respect. Thank you, Conference.
Fermanagh has had the backing of the Minister in retaining its separate status as a council, but is still smarting from the DUP and Sinn Féin political bargaining and gerrymandering on this issue. The people of Fermanagh have strongly objected to the proposed merger with Armagh for many reasons. It is an alliance not helped by the previous competition for the new hospital and the loss of many public sector jobs to Armagh over the years. From a county which has been starved of employment opportunities, and suffering from the public humiliation of Sean Quinn. But the financial burden of projected rates situation has already been mentioned by Frank Britton, that by March 2015, Omag's debt will be 17.7 million and Fermanagh's 5.9 million. We are faced in Fermanagh then with a 20% hike in our rates burden, a heavy charge on businesses and domestic ratepayers already suffering in this recession. Sammy Wilson's only response has been that it's up to local politicians to resolve the situation, a typical Pontius Pilate washing of hands. We will expect a much better response from the Executive on this issue. The Fermanagh Ratepayers Action Group will keep up the pressure, but we are hoping for the continued backing of our own Minister and the party in this respect. And we ask for your support for a county deprived of resources in so many ways.
Councillor Dean.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry that I have to oppose this motion and to request conference to vote against it. I do recognise the sincerity with which Frank and Rosemary present their motion today, and I have no doubt that their responsibility is to represent the interests of the Fermanagh constituents. But I have to oppose this motion for the following reasons. I am a member of Omagh District Council, and I'm also a member of the Voluntary Transition Committee, the group which oversees the proposed merger between Fermanagh and Omagh. We find in Omagh that the Fermanagh Ratepayers Association Group, or Action Group, in my view, are not well informed about the figures. It is true that Omagh has a greater debt legacy, but I have to point out to conference that in the last 10 years in which I have been a councillor in Omagh District Council, we have spent £31 million on building up our infrastructure, particularly in the wake of the Omagh bomb, and building strong community facilities and recreational facilities, of which we are very proud. The majority of that funding has come from central government, European bodies, and from our own reserves. The figure which is quoted of a 20% increase in rates for the Fermanagh ratepayer is grossly erroneous. We have done our calculations. We estimate that the rates will rise in Fermanagh, the domestic rates by no more than 7%, and for business rates just over 5%. Now, we had the privilege last week of hosting our Minister, Alex Atwood, in Omagh District Council for a meeting of the Voluntary Transition Committee. And needless to say, the issue of rates convergence was one which attracted a lot of debate. And Minister Atwood, in his usual competent style, addressed fully all the concerns that were raised by our Fermanagh colleagues in respect of rate convergence. And he flagged up 4 proposed policies which would be implemented to mitigate against these rate disparities. And he has also acknowledged that the notion of having full rate convergence on day one of the new merged councillor is not feasible and will not happen. Conference, when I visit Fermanagh, I see posters saying Fermanagh will not pay Omagh's debts. I don't find that a helpful comment. The merger of Fermanagh and Omagh will go ahead, our Minister tells us. We have to work together. We have to work in partnership. We have to form an alliance to work for all the people of Omagh and Fermanagh. And these comments are not helpful. So whilst I appreciate the sincerity and the bona fides of those who speak on behalf of Fermanagh Ratepayers Action Group, I would ask conference to have full confidence in our Minister, Alex Atwood, who is doing a magnificent job in this area. I support Minister Atwood fully, and I have full confidence that he will arrive at a very satisfactory solution to this vexed issue. Conference, I urge you to oppose this motion. Thank you.
Sorry, I mean, I've already said, if people want to speak, can you put up one of the slips?
Yes, I do apologise, Chair.
Yes, well, I mean, apologies, I rule people out now if that happens. It continues to happen.
I
Thank
do
you.
apologise, I hadn't planned on speaking on this motion. But as someone that represents public services across both Armagh Town and County Fermanagh in a professional capacity, I thought it was worthwhile pointing out that it's incorrect to say that we're somehow taking from the poor to give to the rich. The whole crux of the Assembly and Executive's focus around public services in Armagh and County Fermanagh has been a centralisation of services around the New South West Acute Hospital and also the Galvin Hospital in Derry. What Armagh has been experiencing in previous years is the stripping, particularly of acute mental health services out of Armagh Town, because the health recommendation is that these mental health services need to be co-located around A&E services. So I think it was just worthwhile pointing out that it's wrong to say that. It's true that County Fermanagh do face larger levels of depravity, but that's certainly, I think, going to be the case going forward. For instance, I know just off the top of my head that there were 60 new jobs created in support services at the New South West Acute Hospital, and they're jobs that are going to be conversely lost in Armagh Town, especially around the mental health facilities at the Tyrone and Fermanagh.
The difference of view in this motion is a consequence of the decision you referred to in the previous motion. If the Executive had endorsed the 15 model, Fermanagh would be the freestanding council, and Omagh would have merged with Strabane. And these issues that we're discussing this morning would not have arisen in the way that they have arisen, because Fermanagh would have taken care of its own affairs, Omagh would have joined Strabane, which is the much more natural partner, and so on and so forth. So we're living with the consequence of a political decision imposed after 15 minutes at an executive meeting in November last year, where I outlined in a 20-page paper why the 15 model was better. And it's better because 6 councils wouldn't merge at all. It's better because to manage reform would have been a lot easier, and the cost associated with the whole reform process would have been a lot less. And still, the DUP and Sinn Féin, because of the character of the government, where what they agree prevails, whether it is the right or the wrong outcome, we live with that consequence. It seems to me that when you read the motion doesn't do offence against the argument that has just been outlined. That the motion says supports the efforts of Fermanagh Ratepayers Action Group to secure a just solution to rates convergence and debt legacy issues arising from the proposed merger. So if the conference endorses the motion, it isn't necessarily leading to the consequence that Omagh has to take care of all its debt burden. That might be one of the consequences on the far side of the reform process. That's for another day. But the motion as a motion doesn't do offence to the argument that's just been outlined by Joe Dean. Can I give this reassurance to the conference? As Joe indicated, as I indicated to the Fermanagh representatives, including our own representatives at that meeting last week, in terms of the issue of rates convergence, we're turning over every stone in an effort to make sure that there is not a significant burden that hits the ratepayers as a consequence of local government reform. And as Joe indicated, a number of models will be discussed between DOE and DFP in order to ensure that at the point of RPA, there is not a big bang rates convergence, but there's a process whereby there's transitional relief, either through assistance to ratepayers or increase in grant, or through differential rates being permitted under the law, or through other soft loan options, whereby the burden of convergence will not fall in a significant way upon the ratepayer. So I give that reassurance, and whilst I'd be very critical about a lot around the executive table, in the round it seems that principle of transitional support in respect of rates convergence is a critical principle that will be worked through and resolved in the next 2 or 3 months. And I give that reassurance to Frank, I give that reassurance to everybody in every council. And that at the far side of that, if I don't think it's a fair deal, I won't recommend a deal to the executive or to the assembly. So it seems to me that whilst there's been a difference of emphasis in the speeches made in this debate, the motion doesn't do violence to the interests of Fermanagh, or the interests of Omagh, or to the views of the Fermanagh ratepayers action group.
Thank you, Alex. There's no further speakers, so we'll put it to the floor. Those for the motion? Thank you. Those against? Okay, it's passed. Thank you. Motion 61. Proposer Brian Heading, Association of SDLP Councillors. Councillor Heading.
Thank you, Chair. It goes without saying that we're currently in dire economic straits. One of the things, the 26 councils as they currently are, all have access to a local government economic department. Now, whether it's the 11 model or the 15 model, the 15 council model, the proposal that's coming from the association is that it may be better to bring those economic departments together. It may be better to perhaps reduce competition for resources within those departments. And it may also bring about a strategy that can be implemented by some very skilled and experienced staff.
Where Brian, what the sentiment is, but it would worry me, particularly for anybody who doesn't live within the Belfast or Derry area. I think needs to vote against this motion. Very simply put, there's already a body there to coordinate Northern Ireland wide and bring in investment and set up start-up companies. It's called Invest Northern Ireland, and it concentrates. The truth of it is, largely its efforts are concentrated in Belfast, particularly, and to a lesser extent Derry. Places like Newry, Armagh, Enniskillen, name all the provincial towns, they tend to get left out. But my concern is with this motion, you're creating another one of those, and places like where I come from are going to lose out. All we have in those provincial towns are our economic development departments within councils. They need to retain these. Yes, they need to be working together, but certainly I would not. I think this motion, there's danger in it as it's written at the moment, and I would ask conference to oppose it. Thank you.
Further speakers on this motion? Put to the floor.
The two big ones about them drawing down resources, and they may be able to dominate. But I would argue with you that rather than working separately, it's about pooling resources. It is, what I'm arguing for is that the staff, councillors who will represent the local councils come on board, and maybe perhaps rather than leaving it solely to Invest NI, and I would disagree, I don't think Invest NI have done a particularly good job, whether it's for rural areas or for urban areas. In fact, some people are wondering whether we're getting a good enough investment from the budget that Invest NI has. The case for merging, or for the 26 councils to come together in order to work together, it will actually, in my view, benefit the rural councils, because it gives an opportunity, I think, to reduce competition as it is, and to work out a strategy that will deal with all the council areas, so that the resources can be spread out better, that Belfast and Derry don't get the bigger pieces of the pie, that we can actually look at how economic development can take place in certain areas. So I don't think we're that far from, from what the proposal is stating, but perhaps the conference could pass this, and maybe leave it to the executive to maybe to strengthen the motion, because I understand, Gary, perhaps it is weak in certain areas, but I think the principle of the 26 councils coming together and pooling their resources may be a good one for the party to back. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we put the motion to the floor? Those for? Those against? Lost.